Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to the Bus 13 YouTube channel. Today we're not looking at the MGF, we're looking at my wife's car, which is a 2013 SEAT Altea XL with the 1.6 TDI engine and the 7-speed DSG gearbox. The job today is to change both rear coil springs. The passenger side or left rear coil spring has broken. It turns out it's actually broken twice previously. So we need to change that because it's broken. The driver's side one is still in one piece, but it is quite heavily corroded, and it's a good idea to change springs in pairs anyway, so we're just going to change the two of them. The springs I bought from Dingbro, they were £36 each. I'm going to show you further on part numbers and everything for them, and I'll put them in the description below. To begin with, let's look at the tools you're going to need to do this job. I've got them all laid out in front of me here. First of all, your favourite release oil. In this case I've used Bulldog BDX. If, like my wife's car, you've got these wheel nut caps fitted, you'll need to have the little tool for removing them. This is in the boot of my wife's car. You're then going to need a 17mm socket to undo the wheel bolts. You'll also need the locking wheel nut key, and not that one. This one, you're going to need a breaker bar to break it away. When it comes to changing the springs, you need an 18mm socket and an 18mm spanner. The breaker bar will help you loosen the bolts off, and then you could use a ratchet, but in my case I've used the Ryobi half-inch drive battery gun. You're also going to need a hammer, and I'm using this punch just to line the bolt holes back up. You will of course need a trolley jack. You need the back end of the car raised and supported on axle stands before you do this job. When it comes to refitting the wheels, I've got this tool which you put in place of one of the bolts, and that makes it a lot easier to locate the wheel when you come to refit it. And at the end you're going to need the torque wrench to torque up the bolts on the springs and to torque the wheels. So let's take a look at what the job we're going to be doing involves. So we're at the back of the Altea. I've got it jacked up on my CJ Auto scissor lift, and if we look in here at the rear lower arm, you can see the broken part of the spring at the bottom of the cup there. These springs, because of the way they sit in this cup, when they break they don't tend to fly out, which is actually quite handy. So we've got it jacked up. First job is give everything a good squishing with your favourite release oil. As I say, I've used Bulldog BDX here, so I've squished the bolt, I've squished the nut, and I've squished down where the bush sits. These are the springs that I'm fitting. I'm not going to try and say the name of the company that supplied them, but there's the part number there if you're so interested in what ones we're fitting. Just to compare, I've already changed the driver's side spring, and this is the old one. You can see how corroded that is compared to the new one. Yeah, new looks an awful lot better. And once again, there is the part number for these springs. Hello Echo. So here we get into the process of changing the spring. I've already got the car jacked up. I'm using my scissor lift, but you could use a jack and axle stands, have the axle stands under the sills, just to keep the rear of the car up off the ground. So I'm getting the trolley jack jacked up here underneath the rear lower arm. I'm going to take some of the tension off the spring, and a couple more pumps for good luck. That should be just about enough there. The next part here, I'm getting a hold of my breaker bar and getting the 18mm socket. So we'll pop the socket on the end of the bolt. You might need to clean these because they'll be rusty. And we're just using the breaker bar just to loosen the bolt off. Look at the way that arm's twisting though, and whoops, though indeed. So what we'll do here, we'll just lower that down and stick the jack back under there again. The idea is that we can use the jack to lower the arm down and release the spring gently when we come to take the spring out. Don't ask me why I lowered it all the way down. Obviously I was being silly. So we're going to jack it back up again. Come on, Mr. Bus, hurry up. What a numpty, eh? So now that I've loosened the bolt off, I'm grabbing the 1/2 inch drive battery rattle gun and the 18mm spanner, and what we're going to do is just wind the bolt off. As it is, this side has been changed previously. Oh, look at that. That's not snow, that's rust. This passenger side has been changed previously, so the bolt actually comes out quite easily on this side compared to what it was on the driver's side. But as you can see, I'm winding it back and forward just to clean the rust off the bolt threads as we go. And there we go, we've got the nut off, and just use the gun to wind the bolt the rest of the way out. And there we go, bolt's out. Now it's just a case of gently lowering the jack, which will release the tension on the spring completely. In the case of this side, the bottom arm had a grip on the bush, so just a gentle love tap with a hammer just to release it. And there we go, there's the broken end of the spring. But as I say, it turned out this spring had broken twice previously, so I had 2 broken parts of the spring I had already removed from in there. So this top rubber bush, you're going to need that for the new spring. I'm just going now to grab the new spring from behind the camera. And eventually I'm going to come back with it. There we go, that took some time. So seat that on the top of the spring. You can see where the old spring sat on it. It doesn't stick there very well, as you can see, but just sit it gently on top. Then you can think about positioning the spring in the arm. There's another rubber in the bottom of the arm. On the driver's side in this car there was a plastic clip holding it in the arm, so you could sit the spring down onto the rubber, but on this side the plastic clip was missing, so what I'm doing is I'm twisting it onto the rubber first, and then as you can see it kind of sits in place a little bit. What I'm also going to point out just now, which is an afterthought, there's a little sort of sticky out bit on the bottom of the rubber which has to mate up with a hole in the bottom of the arm. So I'm here just trying to finagle that into position while not losing the rubber off the top that likes to pop off. Now I'm pushing it under the bump stop, making sure it's seated at the bottom. And then we can grab our trolley jack to start pushing the arm back up again. There's a lot of movement on this arm, so it's really quite easy to try and get everything back into position. My advice is, because I'm using the trolley jack, it would tend to jack up in a little bit of an arc, so I've pushed it a bit further forward than I needed it to be, so that as the jack rises it'll line up nicely with the bush. It's not going to push all the way up onto the bush on its own, so that's where the parallel punch comes in handy. Just a gentle tap into there, which helps to line the bush up. Now the next step is probably going to generate comments, but the end of the bolt actually has quite a good taper on it, so I can use that just to get everything really back into line. I'm not hitting it all that hard at this point. We're not damaging the thread in the bolt because it's got that taper on the end of it. Screw the nut on. I'm using the gun on a lower setting here. We're going to tighten the nut back down, just nip it up at the moment. And next we're going to go and grab our torque wrench and torque this bolt up. The torque setting, I'll put it in the description. Apparently it's 110 Newton meters, or at least that's what we've torqued this one to. So eventually I'm going to reappear with the torque wrench. It wasn't where I thought I'd put it down. I really am taking too long on this, haven't I? So we've got our 80mm socket on the torque wrench. The torque wrench is set to 110 Newton meters. The spanner's there, still holding in that. Pull it up and click, click, click. So that's torque to spec. Got the spanner stuck because I'm an idiot. Now we're just going to let the jack down, release the tension on the spring, and there we go. Spring is changed. Even a disorganised idiot like me can change a spring in a space of about 6 minutes. So this is a tool I mentioned for fitting the wheels. It's an M14 by, I believe it's 1.25 thread tool. They're quite easy to find online for fitting wheels to Volkswagen Group cars. So I'm screwing that into the hub in place of one of the wheel bolts. Can quickly grab the wheel and lift it up into place. This is not something that comes with these cars, but it's something I keep in the boot because it just makes fitting the wheels so much easier than trying to line the bolt holes up when you're at the side of the road in the pouring rain with a puncture. Just can't quite get this bolt to take a grip of the thread. Grabbing hold of my 17mm socket just to make it easier to wind the bolts in. And well done, Mr. Teelybus 13, you've put that gun down right in front of where all the action's going on. What a muppet, eh? So all I'm doing is I'm quickly finger screwing in each of the other 4 wheel bolts. Then I'm going to use the Ryobi gun just to run the nuts down until they're contacting the wheel. We're not using ugga-duggas here, we're just quickly nipping them up. As you can see, I'm using the star pattern. Then we can unscrew this wheel mounting stud and screw in the locking wheel bolt. Again, just running it down just until it touches and nothing more. Never ever use an ugga-dugga gun on a locking wheel bolt or locking wheel nut. Grab the torque wrench, set it to 120 Newton meters, attach your 17mm socket and torque the wheel nuts again using the star pattern. I've got the wheels off the ground on this and the handbrake on, which is more than capable of keeping the wheel from turning while you're doing a torque of 120 Newton meters. Do the star pattern and then I'll just go around it again just for luck, just in case any of them need to draw in any further, but as it is they all just click in place and job done. I would advise after this, once you've let the car down, take it for a short run round the block and recheck your torque just to make sure the wheel hasn't settled and the nuts have become loose, and even give it another retorque after 24 hours. Putting these planks of wood back in here, who can spot the deliberate mistake? But quickly drop them in there because I need the extra height to be able to get my scissor lift back out from underneath the car once the car is lowered back onto the ground. And now I'm going to tug at the GoPro because again I'm just a numpty. Get that repositioned and then we can lower the car back onto the ground off this scissor lift that I've got, and that's the job done. So realistically, in real time, it took me about 45 minutes to change both rear springs on this car. It was really easy to do, just undo the bolts on the lower arms at the outer side, at the hub knuckles, push the arms down, take the springs out, new spring in, lift the arm up, refit the bolt, job's a good one. Like I say, torque settings are in the description below. I'll also put the part numbers in the description below. Thanks for watching, consider subscribing and leave me your comments. Tatty bye the now.